Democrats have used access to abortion and reproductive health care to energize voters. We've seen that in a few elections recently. Now, that doesn't appear to be a key issue among Republicans. A new CBS News poll found that just 34% of Republican voters thought discussing stopping abortion was very important, at least to them. Ashley Etienne and Kevin Sheridan join us now. Let's do the introductions. Ashley is a CBS News contributor and former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Kevin is a founding partner at Protein Public Affairs. He previously served as a spokesperson for the RNC and as a senior advisor for the Romney-Ryan 2012 presidential campaign. Okay, now that all the titles have been taken care of, Kevin and Ashley, it's great to see you.
Nice to
Kevin,
see
let
you.
me start here. There is a temptation in our world, meaning the political junkie world, to overanalyze any debate, especially the very first one. Are there notes of caution everyone should use or employ to hyperanalyze the first debate of the Republican cycle this time around?
Well, normally the first debate wouldn't be as important as this one is because we're looking for one alternative to Donald Trump. Half the party is still open to that. All the polling says so. So if the party can coalesce around one person, be it Ron DeSantis or whoever else, then we can have a real race. And the one percenters are going to have to understand at some point they've got to get out this time. They can't do a 2016, stay in the race too long, muck it up for the front runners, and give a real opportunity to take on Donald Trump one-on-one.
Does that mean, listening to you as I was very carefully, Kevin, that the failure of DeSantis to catapult himself closer to Trump during this summer is the Republican Party political story of the year? Because if he had, the one percenters would probably have a wider lane to have an honest conversation with themselves and say, okay, am I going to keep this vanity project or not? But DeSantis has fallen, not grown, and they're like, well, hey, why not? Why shouldn't I stick around, right?
Yeah, he fell 10 points. He did not have a great launch, obviously. He should have gotten a bump out of his launch. He did not. He had $20 million dropped on his head, calling him sanctimonious and unlikable and everything else. And he's got to prove that to his donors, to the rest of the party that is looking for an alternative, that he's the man. And he's still in the best position to do that, but he's got to prove it, and he's got to do it fast before everybody starts looking for someone else.
Ashley, from the Democratic perspective, what has this summer in the Republican Party primary contest meant? What has it told you?
Well, I mean, what it tells me is there's a crisis of leadership in the Republican Party. The fact that there's a 1,000-pound gorilla in the room and everyone's acting like it doesn't exist, that the former president is indicted for the most egregious offenses against American democracy. It's on videotape. He's not denied any of it. And it's like it doesn't even exist, and it's not even registering in the poll among GOP primary voters. That is alarming, in my opinion. And the reason why is because really almost to some degree, I hate to be hyperbolic here, but the state and the health of American democracy is in the hands of Republican primary voters right now. So the fact that democracy is not even registering in the polls is a concern for me, because if you don't have a healthy democracy, nothing else matters.
And yet, I keep hearing from Democrats that as long as Trump is the likely nominee, that makes Biden and Kamala Harris stronger because they believe Trump is the most beatable potential Republican nominee. So at another level, aren't you happy about what's happened this summer?
Oh, absolutely not. I will tell you this. I'm an American citizen before I'm a Democrat, before I'm affiliated with any party. I firmly believe in the principles of American democracy and our Constitution. So no, I would not be thrilled by that. But I can say the greatest nightmare for the Democratic Party is if Trump doesn't win. And I think to Kevin's point, 50% of the GOP primary voters are persuadable. That's a nightmare for the Democratic Party to some degree. So the question is, to Kevin's point, and we were just talking about this backstage, if they could quickly coalesce, if the party could quickly coalesce around an alternative, again, nightmare for the Democratic Party.
Kevin, that is the greatest if, because the mathematics play to Trump's advantage if lots of one percenters stay in, because they're dividing the anti-Trump vote just as they did in 2015 and 2016. The RNC is more Trumpian than it was in 2016. State parties are more Trumpian than they were in 2016. These are built-in advantages. And if the party doesn't coalesce in an anti-Trump way, I don't see any way to stop him. Do you?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. We've got to do what the Democrats did last time in 2020 and get these candidates out of the race. It was astonishing. We were talking about this earlier. That at the
after
same
South Carolina,
time,
boom,
they're all out, and that was a shock to me. I didn't know that a party could actually act like that. Republicans like to be right rather than, I think, win sometimes. So I'm hopeful that maybe we learned a lesson, but, who knows?
And yet, when I talk to Republicans about this, they say, the reality is the base, that 30% that Anthony Salvanto was talking about earlier, the I'm with Trump no matter what, isn't interested in this other strategy that you have and will take action at the state party level to try to stop that. I mean, that's a real schism in the party. It hasn't been resolved.
And we have no idea what it would look like if Trump doesn't win the nomination. What does his base do? What does Donald Trump do? But we've got to take it one step at a time and see what happens with, those of us who aren't necessarily supporting Trump. But, the polls right now should be scary for Democrats because Trump and Biden are polling very, very tightly within the margin of error. And there's a real chance that Donald Trump could beat Joe Biden. He's that weak right now.
Joe Biden is that weak.
Yes.
What?
Address that, Ashley.
What? I don't know why the president would ever be weak compared to the former president, who again is about to surrender to authorities tomorrow. I might be trapped in the matrix. I have no idea, what's going on here. But the reality is like there's no way Joe Biden is weak compared to Donald Trump. There's still a lot of unknowns about Donald Trump. It's still in terms of how voters will process the accumulation of all these indictments and trials, et cetera, over time. So there's still a lot of questions. There's still a lot of time left. I don't anticipate that he will end up in.
Ashley, let's talk some basic blocking and tackling.
Sure.
How satisfied are you or not with where things are with the Biden-Harris reelection campaign in terms of ground game, state party directors, the fundamentals, the door knocks, the digital outreach, et cetera? It seems to me that it's not quite there yet. And in my experience with reelection campaigns, it's built up a little bit more by now.
Well, here's the reality is Democrats are incredibly strong at the ground game. That's our superpower is the ground game. So I anticipate that'll be fine. But here's a couple signs that will signify that the campaign is strong. They just gone up with a $25 million buy in key battleground states. That's a big deal. That's earliest.
Earlier on this program, Jason Miller, speaking on behalf of former president, says that's a sign of weakness, that Democrats are afraid.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's a sign that we're doing things differently. We usually don't go up on TV with a proactive message this early. So to me, it's a sign that we're trying to combat negative coverage as well as sort of, meet voters where they are with our message. So I think that that's a positive sign. The other positive sign, though, is watching the vice president get her footing. She's now taking, being more aggressive and taking more risks. That's going to yield great return for the president.
Ashley Etienne, Kevin Sheridan, thank you very much for your time. Always good to see you.
All right.